Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining in. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. I also just wanted to get on camera and say hi for a second. We're talking about all things holiday and all things magic. So I needed any excuse to dress up for today. So I've got on my cozy sweater, I've got my Disney mug, it's got some tea in it, and I hope you're looking forward to today's presentation. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I saw a few more people chime in, but I don't want to hold us up during our webinar time today. I am Kate Hamilton. I am a client partner here at Insights Now and based out of Chicago. And my day-to-day job involves research design. And I get to work with colleagues like Jenny here, who is a qualitative insights researcher on our team. But she actually wasn't able to join us today. She ended up having to host a few live sessions. So we will miss her. Just know that this presentation was a team effort all the way. A few quick housekeeping items. If you have a question or comment during the presentation, don't be shy. Send them in using the box to the right. Also, if you're having any technical issues, we do have our teammate Shelly on the line, and she'll be able to help you through those. We're also recording the session, so you will receive a copy of the webinar as soon as it's available. It usually takes a couple of days, and we'll send out like a nice link to the rebroadcast. This presentation is being executed as part of our COVID-19 tracking series. This tracker is an ongoing weekly survey with our clean label enthusiasts, and this presentation is a great example of how a topical deep dive that we've run from time to time. For our holiday topics today specifically, we actually skipped Halloween, both literally and figuratively, since it seems to be canceled in most areas. But we do have a few references for fall behaviors you may find interesting later on in the session. When we first started this tracking series, we identified 4 major time periods against the pandemic and how CLEs are being motivated with their product purchasing. In the beginning, these first 2 phases happened pretty quickly in terms of succession. Later, though, the zones have started to muddle and shift a little bit, which I'll show you in a moment. If you remember, 6 or so months ago, we were stockpiling goods. It was all about functionality. We were only buying the necessities, and even then, only when we could find them, right? Like there was so much out of stock, both on the shelves and with production lines. We both saw in the data and in reality that those purchase motivators were being driven by function above all else. As we progressed into the summer months, we actually felt like we were well into the adjustment period of the pandemic response. In June, we saw psychological motivators peak. Now, those types of purchases are driven by the need to seek some balance in their lives. Again, all signs were pointed into that recovery zone by news reports and optimistic predictions. That psychological peak happened right when we were settling into our adjustments. This moment is also when we predicted would be the best time to launch line extensions. And we saw these come in flurries over the summer, everything from new flavor profiles to partnerships. We saw a Wendy's and Pringles joint venture announcement. We also saw a lot of Halloween inspiration drops. There was excitement and buzz on new innovations. Again, we thought we were on the cusp of the next zone, which in our initial predictions, we identified the recovery phase as the best time to launch new innovations. In reality, the last few weeks and even months of our tracker shows we really slowed down. You notice that adjustment and recovery phases have both blurred and stretched out. The purchase motivators have also remained pretty flat consistently across the different functions and across, these last couple of weeks. And when we take a step back, it's really easy to see why that is. The U.S. is currently looking to be headed into either a third peak for the year with the coronavirus, or it might be that front part of the wave that we have yet to see manifest. We're holding our breath a little bit and, quote, waiting to see on a variety of fronts. which includes holiday planning. Now, September 18th is highlighted here for a reason. That's when we were asking about all of these holiday predictions, and so we timed this data to show you where we were at then versus how we're presenting a couple weeks later. Now, before we get any deeper, you've been looking at those different motivator purchase types, the psychological, sensorial, social, and functional. And I know we didn't go into a deep dive on what all of those were, but I'm really curious, and we're going to put up a poll here really quick, on which motivator do you think has been the strongest in September?
Okay.
We've got a couple of votes in. I think we've got like 2 or 3 more people. Let's see if they are able to vote.
Okay.
Very interesting with where we think we're going.
Yeah. Should we close?
Okay, we're going to go ahead and close that poll and show you what the results look like. The really funny thing about this, right? A lot of you are thinking that the sensorial is starting to peak or is coming back up, and that might be the most sought after purchase motivator. When in reality, so let's hide those poll results. In reality, we saw function peaking again. And honestly, this holiday deep dive was running at the end of September. Like I said, we did September 18th was our first pass at the data collection. And with functional motivators being on the rise, we took a step back and we didn't look at it in the vacuum. And it might not actually be as surprising as you think. So, right, unemployment is still very high right now. And normally this time of year, we actually might have seen a peak at the social motivators. So social motivators are all about building relationships and driven by relationships, both friends and family. And while we're on the edge, we're getting really close to that traditional holiday season, people are usually starting to consider other people when it comes to what they're spending their money on. But functional is remaining or coming back on the high end, and it's a really reminiscent of some of the information we'll show you in a little bit about this kind of wait and see holding pattern that we witnessed. So while we're on the cusp of the holiday season, this is usually entering the most magical time of the year, right? I held up my Disney mug for you a few moments ago. We're usually becoming very high-spirited as a community and as a society. And what we saw with this holding period is that we're a little unsure. We're not quite as excited as we usually are, and there's definitely some coronavirus undertones related to that. So one last poll before we dive into really the emotional impact in these magical moments of the holiday season is we would love to know how you feel about the anticipated holiday season coming up. And I apologize for that dog barking. All right, we've got a few more people who might still be trying to vote. Really interesting what we're seeing right now, though. All right, we're going to go ahead and close this vote, and let's show you the results. So we've got hopefulness up there, but we've also got this feeling of anxiety. And we know this was a single select for you all, so you couldn't choose multiple emotions, but that's one of the things that we allowed our CLEs to do when we went through this emotions work. And just remember these results for a moment, the hopeful and the anxious, because we're going to touch on both of these in a few slides. So leading up to that survey on September 18th, where we were asking about those anticipatory emotions, we haven't been looking at this in a vacuum, right? We don't want to just be looking at our quantitative data or just looking at our qualitative data. We want to be coming at this with a holistic viewpoint on what's happening with, everyone, with the general population. What we saw with a lot of these news headlines is that everything is hinging on this not sure what's happening with COVID in terms of weather, mostly. As weather's cooling down, more people are going to be gathering indoors. So there's just this lot of notion on preparing for these types of changes, and there's a lot of anticipatory edge that we see. Then, in addition to planning and shopping predictions, there's not a lot of sensationalism when we cruise through the news sources. Now, if you remember earlier in the pandemic, there were a lot of fear-induced articles just even a few months ago, and surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, maybe media's learned their lesson, people are a little bit not as vocally negative coming into the holidays right now. And then here are a few more headlines and where we can see some of this uncertainty being present. We even see a nod to our functional buying behaviors with that bottom article and the idea that people might be stockpiling again as the weather's starting to cool down. One of the first questions that we asked our CLEs is, what will the holidays be like this year? And we realized that this isn't going to exist in a vacuum. People are going to have multiple emotions, but we still tried to grab just some overall general holistic view on what's going to happen in the next couple of months. About 1 in 5 people were really negative as they saw this holiday season approaching. They believe that these experiences are going to be bad changes. They are going to be too disruptive to their traditions and to their relationships, and they're really not excited about it. The majority of people, though, just think this holiday will be completely different. And when we dove into this with more context in a couple of our qualitative discussions, it's really hard to pin a word on it. It was really hard to pin a phrase on it. We know it's going to be different, but just how different or how different is going to manifest, we really don't know yet. But that's people being on hold, being on the verge of being prepared mentally for what's to come. Now, downward trends are probably going to be the least surprising for everybody today, but they're still noteworthy, and we wanted to go over them. So we see that there's going to be a lot less travel, a little domestically, for sure internationally, and also related to the idea of visiting out-of-town family. So some people might still see people locally or if they have family members within their community, but we're not seeing that cross-state, cross-U.S. travel like we usually see. Dining out is also down, again, not surprising. Restaurants have opened up a lot of outdoor seating, and as cold weather is creeping in, you don't necessarily have the indoor dining safety precautions, or people aren't as comfortable going into indoor dining. We talked about that a couple months ago in one of our webinar share-offs on COVID tracking as well. A lot of this in-person, in-home trends are all going down. So things like parties, in-home entertaining, shopping in person. And then this was a measurement we threw in just because we were purely curious on the idea of festive clothing. So we had seen for the last couple of years that people were really getting into the costume spirit around the holidays. There's been a lot of tacky sweaters. There's been a lot of creative expression around the holidays, but that's definitely on the decline this year as people are socializing, entertaining, and gathering less and less. So in one CLE's words, everything is so up in the air with COVID this year that all the holidays are going to be very different. We may celebrate without children and grandchildren, which is really not a celebration. It's going to be very sad this year. So let's look at the positives, what we're seeing rises in terms of, quote, more intimate and potentially safer activities. First and foremost, home-cooked meals. These have been the strongest trend the last couple of months. In holiday conversations specifically, some of that is being driven to that lack of travel, the lack of visiting friends, the lack of going to group parties. So people are physically going to have to depend on themselves and their own cooking skills if they're not going to any of those large family meals. So with that, we actually see about 63% of people are open to new recipes. So holiday dining menus are usually a really strong association this time of year. And we're going to see a little bit of a shakeup. So we're not quite sure if these new recipes they're open to are going to stick, if they're going to come out good. Some people did mention they're going to be cooking for the first time as well, but we're going to wish them the best success on this new venture, and hopefully maybe they'll start to make some new traditions as they experiment themselves. Other things that are on the rise, and again, some of these may not be super surprising, but we've got things like online shopping, charitable donations, gift cards, mailed gifts, homemade gifts, and decorating, though. We're going to spend a few extra moments on these two in particular. This is a source of finding magic that we identified when we were trying to figure out, there's going to be differences to the holidays this year, but is there still magic available? When it comes to decorating and even gifting, those are senses of joy and cheer. It gives people a lot of peace, and there's a lot of nostalgic tradition that comes with it. So for some of these CLEs, decorating is one of their favorite things to do around the holidays. It really brings cheer and joy. And it's not just the inside of your home, right? A lot of people decorate outside this time of year. So having the outside of our home all fixed up for the holidays is fun. It's fun for our neighbors to see and enjoy. And then those homemade gifts is this person really enjoys making Christmas ornaments, and even sent in some of the examples of things that she's hand knit. So people just feel really connected, and this is a sense of magic in a time of change, in a time of disruption. So decorating, though, wasn't just limited to the winter holidays. I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar that we did skip talking about Halloween deliberately, but we still saw evidence of some increased fall decorating this year, unaided when we talked about this. And we're attributing some of this to people, still being home more than they ever have before. But it also reminded us of the conversations that we had a couple of months ago where, do you remember the sparking joy craze that was going on about decluttering and organizing and just clearing out the things that you don't need? Well, it literally seems like no one was tossing out their home decor, especially not for the fall. So Halloween, my favorite time of year. I love going all out for that. And this is one of their inspiration photos. They hadn't actually pulled out their decorations in September yet, but they went on to say how they decorate their house from top to bottom this time of year. And when we again pulled back and looked at the macro and we took off the CLE lens, we saw a really big trend on social media for fall decorating as well. So there were some really subtle details like these bats on the ceiling of this person's children's playroom. But then you have the other ones where, again, it's like every table, every surface has some kind of fall or Halloween inspiration on it. This is, again, that sense of magic to a relatively dull and muted emotional period. Two other things on the rise going into this holiday season are going to be attending virtual religious services as well as virtual parties, which, again, we've all quickly had crash courses on Zoom meetings and Zoom Hangouts and Zoom happy hours. And it doesn't have to be the Zoom platform, right? But that's quickly become the term for video calls or for video meetings. And that seems to be riding high, and it's going to be very apparent in the next couple of months on the social level as well. So to dive into emotions a bit deeper, we gave our CLEs about 24 different reactions for how they felt about the upcoming holiday season. We used our implicit survey, where if you've used our implicit survey before, if you've been to any of our other webinars, we talk a lot about reaction times and their speed to response. So for this particular exercise, it was just How do you feel about the upcoming holiday season? Does this describe you? Yes or no? So it's just yes, no, binary responses. And for the next couple of slides, we looked at the percent agrees on this. There's a lot of ways to report on emotions, and since we're projecting, we decided to look at those agreement scores rather than the specific implicit scores that we have or can develop for other studies. So right off the bat, these emotions seem a little bit in the net positive space. So hopeful was the number one, which was also the same as you all, right? So about 68% of CLEs felt hopeful in this coming season, and about 63% of you today felt hopeful about the upcoming season. So isn't it fun when those two things collide? It's also important to note that hopeful was the highest. So we didn't blind and take anything out or change the setup on how these were being presented. But we've got this sense of just net positivity, like I mentioned, which sounds like good news, right? But then we kept looking. With this overall less agreement is cheerfulness. But then the next row down, we see 3 completely different emotions that are pretty equal, right? So you've got excited, people are energetic, people are worried. It's kind of conflicting. We're seeing a lot of I need to wait and see how I feel mindset. But it's also really important to mention that emotions don't exist in a vacuum. You can be excited and you can be worried at the same time and at the same levels. Having a mix of emotions is incredibly normal and when we're given this holiday context and the coronavirus pandemic, it really does make sense in our current time frame. But at first you're scratching your head, like how can these same things be all in the same bubble? And it's because we're complex people. Humans are complex when it comes to emotions. So what's definitely not a factor though right now, so this might be a really cheesy pun, but some light in our magic hat, is that currently people are not so upset that they are angry or negative about the upcoming holiday season. So you see really low numbers of people who are dreading it, who are angry. We do see some indifference, a little bit of apathy, but I wanted to call our attention on 2 very different ends of the spectrum here, where fear and hope are the 2 core emotions that help us understand the future. And in this situation, we see people are much more on the hopeful side than they are the fearful side. But 21% of people who feel fearful is still a really large group of people. And I would bet, bottom on the dollar, that people don't usually feel fearful when you're talking about the holiday season. So for all of these emotions, we dove even deeper into how CLEs were going about their holiday plans. So while the wait and see feeling is looming and they're kind of on edge, we are still in uncertain times. And what are they doing as a result of that? Are they planning? Are they going to be more spontaneous? How are traditions going to be molded and adapted to this disruptive year that we're in? We really have no idea how things are going to be in November or December, so planning now is quite possibly setting yourself up for failure. It is better to keep your expectations low and go for a surprise if and when it's possible. Also echoing this, I don't know what to do. Last year I was already making preliminary plans. This year I have no idea what might happen. And if you look on the travel trends searches and analytics right now, you're going to see the same thing. People still aren't back comfortable on planes. They're definitely not doing as much group travel or regular vacations or whatnot. And honestly, a lot of different states are implementing new travel restrictions among ourselves as well. So it's really hard to want to make a decision, to want to make plans, but then literally can't because you don't know if whatever you do is going to be undone in a couple weeks' time. After reading stories like those, we were asking ourselves, okay, so we're not overly excited about the holidays. But is there still going to be that holiday magic that prompted this entire study? Are there or can there be new sources for holiday spark and behaviors? Can we still find the sparkle to the season? Turns out we can. So in addition to food and holiday associations, shopping is another topic that's really high this time of year usually. However, budgets and functional motivators are top of mind right now, right? So safety is a really high concern. And the combination between limited store hours, capacity restrictions, airborne discussions about coronavirus all have people moving into that online retail space, much greater capacities than ever before. And then even more so with this lens of holiday shopping. And I know you can go back and you can look at all the trends of online shopping. And every year we say there's more online shopping than ever before. There's more online shopping than ever before. But like literally stores aren't open right now. So online shopping is happening. And that is the trend. There's no other way to say it. So for this DLE, they're going to try to buy more of their Christmas gifts online and avoid the store as much as possible. However, this is going to be a new behavior because they're a mall shopper, and this year is just going to be so different. Now, for most people, spending money can be stressful, and holiday gifting and supplies and preparation is no different. So what we're seeing at the retail level is an extension of sales. This is a way to alleviate some of that stress. Just this week, we had Prime Day happen, for example, and sales generally encourage spending. So for this CLE, they're really hoping that the end to Black Friday is going to be something that continues to exist once we're past this pandemic. It had become ridiculous. They didn't feel like the pressure of knowing that you have to do something at a certain time to get the best price was really worth their time. Online shopping is the key word, like we've been talking about. Yes, it's all what retailers are focusing on, but it is the right approach in a situation like this. The good news is it's going to be an extended sale period so that everyone has enough time to shop on deals. This person sees this as a stress reliever that the sales are happening sooner versus before might have sounded a little contradictory, right? People might have been really annoyed how soon holiday sales were happening in the past, but now we have this new veil in front of us and this new need to shop with new behaviors. Another trend we're seeing is people prepare to travel less, both domestically and internationally, and even among state to state, is we're seeing an ongoing emphasis on this idea of local support and activities the last few months, specifically as we talk about these holidays. So this may be the year of a more local holiday, and it's a little cheesy because I think it sounds a little bit like a Hallmark movie, but people are connecting with their neighbors in small businesses and supporting others. It's definitely part of the good news movement that we've been seeing come out of the pandemic. Some ways to support, including the gifting aspect, like this CLE, who's planning on shopping more at small businesses to help them stay in business. These types of stores have unique one items, so to make such special gifts for others as well as for myself, we should all be looking at these types of businesses because they're truly the heart of our community. And it's not just shopping and spending money as a way to support community. People are finding ways to still donate and give back locally too. So this person is planning on donating more to their local charity, which volunteering and putting together gifts with basic sanitation items, socks and gloves, and giving back to people in need. That's a sense of joy for this person, and that's how they can feel connected and giving back, one, during the holidays, and two, during hard times. And so by local, we also don't just mean community, but we also mean smaller gatherings. So that local holiday can also be viewed as a more intimate holiday. This person has started preparing their mind for the upcoming changes. Instead of thinking for bigger circle, things have come down to really only our family. I'm thinking of ways to surprise my family and keep them happy and excited. So trying to embrace those positives. It's also going to be a more creative holiday. So we saw that CLE earlier who likes to hand make ornaments, and she wasn't the only one who was making gifts herself. I'm going to A, buy supplies from small shops to make handmade gifts, and B, buy handmade gifts from merchants in Etsy. So it's still encompassing this idea of local, more community connectiveness in a holiday season that is and will be potentially the most disrupted that generations have seen in a really long time. So keeping with that local and intimate trends, we identified potentially 3 different ways where we think people are going to find holiday magic. One of them, coming off the heels of those creative gifts, is this idea of personalization. So I would love to visit small shops in our town square. I always buy pieces of pottery made by local artisans for my daughters. So we're looking for small, functional, really high meaning gifts. I don't know that we're going to see a lot of the really big ticket technology gifts that tend to dominate the sales and dominate the forecast as we've seen in past years. And again, a lot of that's driven to functional motivators, to budget constraints. But we're looking for those new ways to connect, and the personalized gift feels more appropriate this year. We also see people doing more creative, smaller affairs. So while this person's looking forward to being safe and enjoying the holidays with people in their household, they love to cook, but this year has changed some things. So they won't be cooking for a large group this year. People are staying just within their households, within their COVID pods if they have one. Might be seeing people virtually and online, but physically the in-person interactions are going to be missing. And finally, we see people finding holiday magic with new ways to connect. So they're having a virtual holiday gathering this season. It's something to look forward to. It's something different and exciting to try out this year. So one of the underlying themes you see in all of these is that kind of net positivity still, right? Optimism, if you remember from the emotions part to this presentation, was on the high side. So people, while they're going to be disruptive, we've been through this for 6 to 8 months now. We're definitely in that adjustment mindset where, okay, we're getting settled, we're knowing what to expect, we might not like it, but we're embracing it, and we're still looking for that magic where we can find it. So how do we help them make the magic happen? And when I say we, I mean marketers, brands, products, services, people in the industry. How can we help spur the magic, spark the magic to actually happening? So the first, let's go back to these 3 themes. So personalized gifts. Can your messaging or your product be tailored or packaged so it can be part of something personal they create? Is there a way to engrave? Is there a way to send a special note? Is there a way to add meaning to it without it being a large expense? Because we have to remember the functional and the budget issues that we're still going to be under this year. For creative, smaller affairs, just a really open question: how can you help them be more creative? What new foods can you help them experience and cook? Maybe that's a new recipe, maybe that's a new combination of things, maybe it's just a slight new ingredient or a slight new seasoning that you can introduce to them. But in general, how can your products cater to smaller groups? So maybe you don't need, that huge turkey this year, and you're going to need something smaller because you literally have less people to feed. Different things like that is really going to help fuel people to be successful as they try to find this magic themselves. And finally, how can we help them with new ways to connect? Can you create a way to share an experience virtually? We've seen, a lot of technology commercials these days about people, still connecting afar. And I personally think that's going to be the biggest theme in holiday advertisements this year, as we're not going to see mixed families. We're not going to see generational families, around the Christmas tree or around the dinner table. I think we're going to see people on camera. That's literally how things are unfolding for us this year. So is there any way that your brand can be involved in making those new connections? And what new experiences are you able to create that have never been created before? The beauty about this is people are optimistic. So people are feeling a little adventurous. People that have never done virtual meetings before are now doing virtual happy hours. So it's still a time for experimentation and newness and innovation, and people are embracing those challenges and pushing themselves to learn new skills. Before we go, short and sweet presentation today. I would love to know if you learned anything new today. And if so, feel free to drop those in the comments or the question boxes for what you learned, and we'll see what we share with the group today. But I'm hoping that some of you were inspired by some of the magic pieces, or maybe there's ways that you all are going to find magic yourself. Okay, somebody here is definitely looking forward to the Zoom version of opening presents and celebrating Christmas morning. It's going to be a little bit different, but excited nonetheless. So great that I'm glad our CLEs are feeling the same thing that you are. Somebody else has also said that they are going to be cooking for the first time this year. They're a little scared and nervous. Know that you are not alone. I can tell you from what we've read and what we saw in this holiday study is that a lot of people are going to be new to this. So maybe one of those pieces that brands can help you with are literally like how to cook recipes and more step-by-step instructions. Somebody else is typing. Gifting. Yeah, they are definitely going into the gift card space. So there was some agreement with that. But again, they're looking at those functional type gifts. So what people need, not necessarily what they want. Awesome. I'm going to read some more of these later on, and I will follow up with some of you. So you all have been a wonderful audience. I've seen a couple dozen people join in the last hour or so. So we appreciate you showing up and learning about the upcoming holidays this year. If you typed a question earlier, awesome. If something else has pinged you now, don't be shy. We were really excited to share this holiday news with you, and as we learned them ourselves, and we're all preparing for a new year this year. If you're interested in seeing what else is going on with Insights Now throughout the month of October, we've got another webinar next week. That's the Not So Secret Life of Pets. Apologies, that title's a little off. The Not So Secret Life of Pets. I am presenting that, and I worked with my colleague Kristen on that as well. It's going to be a really exciting potential brand new series that's going to dive into all things pets, from treats to purchasing to how they make us feel. We're passionate about that one because we're both dog lovers and pet owners. At the end of October, we've got our Quirks virtual sessions coming up. So Dave, our CEO, is going to be hosting a presentation. I am also presenting a session. Mine is a little themey coming into Halloween, or right in front of Halloween. I've got a little Halloween fun presentation for you that I hope you enjoy. And then October 18th through November 5th, Sarah and Greg are going to be hosting a Learn Shop at SSP this year. So that's all we've got for you today. Our contact details are at the bottom. We hope you learned something new. We hope you're able to find the magic in your own celebrations this year, and we look forward to seeing you at next week's session. Have a great rest of your day.